YouTube, what's up everybody, Doomwake here. Welcome to another No, we're not playing Magic today. Before we continue, make sure to hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and please, this one is very important, let me know in the comments what you thought, because this is some new content and I'm really interested to see what you guys think of it. This is more going to be a tutorial for people who maybe have not played this game, or if you're new to the game and you're just starting out, this is going to be some more of an informative video to let you know about the different archetypes, what's being played, so on and so forth, from the eyes of a Magic player who, you know, I played a little bit of Yu-Gi-Oh! Back in 2002, 2003, but I haven't touched the game in almost 20 years now, and I've really been enjoying this. One thing I will say, this account is not free to play. However, there are tons and tons of ways to acquire gems, whether that's through the solo mode or other missions. You can even, when you start the game, they give you options to skip the missions and you can still acquire the gems that way. So if you want to make this a free to play account, you certainly can build any one of the decks that you see in today's video free to play. So let's get started. Alright, so this is the first deck that we're going to take a look at. Now, I know a lot of you watching the channel are, fellow Magic players. I would assume most of the people watching the channel play Magic, because that's what I've been doing. That's been the primary content focus. So I'm going to kind of go over the decks a little bit, not too much in detail, kind of go over the basic premise, and then we're going to kind of compare them to a Magic archetype that you might be more familiar with. So this deck is called Brigade Zoo. This is the most played deck on the platform. I think probably because it's one of the easier decks to play. It's incredibly powerful. It has a lot of draw power, a lot of card advantage. That's what I'm looking for. Duh. But basically, it's trying to assemble a lot of these what's called Brigade monsters. They all have this effect where you can, once they're in play, you can banish any number of them from your graveyard to link summon I think it's Brigade or... Excuse me, special summon a beast, a winged beast. Okay, but yeah, they all have those three types: beast, winged beast, or beast warrior. That's kind of the tri of the Brigade. But essentially, you're trying to bin some of those monsters, get a lot into your graveyard, special summon big, beast warriors from your extra deck. There's a lot there. The most common way to do that is this one. This one sends itself to the graveyard as its effect. You can just discard it, and its effect is you can send another one from your deck to the graveyard. So you can basically entomb if you're familiar with Magic. Then you can put this one into your graveyard. When this one goes to your graveyard, you do the same thing. You get to search your deck and bin another card. You then bin this one. This one has an effect when it goes to the graveyard. You get to search and put it into your hand. So you start with this, discard it, bin this triggers, bin this. Now you have a one from your hand. And now, from a single fractal, you now have 3 in your graveyard and 1 in your hand to start kind of going off with your link chains. You can go into this, which is more disruption. This, which if you have extra leftover material in your hand, you could special summon more from your hand to keep the chain going. For those of you not familiar with the game, link means you can basically, as long as you've satisfied this requirement, which is 2 beast warriors, including wind ancient warriors, but we're summoning these with the effect, so you can special summon them. But link 2 means that you need 2 materials to do it. Link 3 means you need 3 materials, so on and so forth. So if you have three monsters in play that satisfy the requirements, you can link summon. This doesn't necessarily count as that because you're special summoning a link monster, so you can ignore the summoning conditions on it as long as you use the right material. The rest of the deck is a lot of card draw. You have this, which is essentially just draw 2. You exile the top 10 cards and then draw 2. This, which tutors for any of your Brigade monsters as well as your Zodiacs. We have a small Zodiac package to go into Zeus, which comes up in some games. And then the big card here, Brigade Revolt. This is probably one of the more powerful cards in the deck. You can, once you flip it up, you can special summon any number of those beast warrior, wing beast from your graveyard, and then use those for a link summon. So if you have 4 in your graveyard, you flip this up, summon all 4 into play, then use those to link summon. Now, not only do you get to put your big boss monster into play, which is a really powerful card, you then remember, a lot of the Brigade cards have effects when they go to the graveyard, so you get to summon your 4 Tri-Brigades for free and then use them for a link, you get all of their graveyard triggers too. So you get a ton of value with this deck. The rest of the cards were just, common. These are what's called hand traps. These are probably the most popular cards in the game. What is a hand trap, you ask? Well, it's a card that's essentially, if it's in your hand, you can discard it for a certain effect. So this one says you can discard it whenever your opponent special summons, you get to draw a card that turn. Probably the most powerful card in the entire game, because think of it this way. If you discard it, they have two choices. They either go through their whole combo and let you draw 10 to 15 cards, or they just skip their turn and they stop, which essentially is what we call in Magic a time walk. So really powerful effect. This one stops them from, you can discard it, you can stop them from adding a card, special summoning, or sending a card from the deck to the graveyard. So really powerful card there. More ways to do some negations. I'm not going to go over those in detail, but that is Tri-Brigade Zoo. Next deck that we're taking a look at is probably everybody's least favorite deck on the ladder, and that is Eldritch. And as you can see, we have 31 traps in our deck. This is the most, probably the purest control deck in the entire game, and for good reason. This deck is incredibly powerful. It's playing a lot of powerful traps. I'm not going to go over each one individually, but essentially what Eldritch does is there are ways that you can special summon Eldritch from your deck or hand or graveyard. These 5 cards allow you to do that, so you can basically get into play for free. You have some card draw here. This is essentially a tutor, and then all of your traps are mostly just like ways to blow up the field, ways to counter what your opponent's doing. Skill Drain is the most broken trap in the entire game, I would assume. Competing with Imperial Order, I guess, but this card is absurd. The fact that you can play 3 is insane. You flip it up, you pay 1,000, and your opponent can't do anything. They can't. None of their monster effects work. It's completely insane. There's very few ways to actually get rid of it. And then we have some more engine pieces. These things, they're ways to keep the deck flowing, and this deck has so much card advantage because these Hakero and Conquistador, when they flip up, if you have an Eldritch, they have an effect, so you can either, with this one, you can destroy a card from the field, with this one, you can banish a card from the graveyard. And the cool thing is, when they're in your graveyard, you can exile it at the end step to search for one of your ways to summon your Eldritch. So basically, you can flip this up, your opponent maybe attacks it, and then next turn you can exile it to get another one of these, to get another Eldritch, and you just keep the cards flowing. This deck is really good at stopping your opponent from playing the game, which is, a lot of people really enjoy that. And this is definitely the most pure control deck. Just a lot of ways to sweep the board and counters, and just really, really awesome control deck if you're into that sort of thing. All right, now we're going to take a look at some combo decks, which is probably the most popular archetype. I wouldn't quite call Tri-Brigade a combo deck. This deck is, I guess this is kind of like a hybrid combo control. Essentially, this is what's called Drytrons. And what this deck is trying to do is assemble a board of, I guess, 1,000, maybe not 1,000, but what feels like 1,000 negates, just stopping your opponent from playing. This deck's boss monster is essentially Herald of Ultimateness, which is, you can only fusion summon it, so you need a fusion spell to be able to summon it. And then, ritual summoned, which is essentially the same thing. And then when your opponent would special summon a monster or activate a spell or trap card, you can discard a fairy monster from your hand, negate it. And that's not a once per turn. So if you end on 5 or 6 cards in hands, which this deck is really good at doing, because it has a lot of ways to recoup cards, essentially there's a lot of ways to, when this card is discarded or sent to the graveyard, search for more stuff. So you can essentially, discard cards to special summon your fairies, use those to go into links, you can get the fairies back, and then all of them, or most of them, have abilities to search for more fairies when they go to the graveyard. So you can keep refilling, keep going through links and filling up with more fairies. This card is essentially, this card is absurdly powerful, since if it's sent to the graveyard, you can banish 2 lights from your hand, field, or graveyard. So if you have two extras in your graveyard, basically you discard this, and you get to add 2, it's just a +1, you get to add 2 fairies, 2 level 2 or lower fairies from your deck to your hand. So it's just more ways to keep going and generating more card advantage. Ben 10 is another really important part of this deck, is as you can ritual summon. We're not really ritual summoning it. Basically, the line of text was here. If this card is tributed, you can add a light fairy monster from your deck to your hand. Now, when you have your fusion material, your fusion cards, your fusions allow you to use your materials from hand or graveyard. So basically you can kind of use this as a ritual, get more material that way, and then you end on this with, 5 or 6 fairies in hand. Your opponent just has, they can't really compete with that a lot of the time. So it's a combo deck because it's generating, it makes a lot of summons in the same turn, but it's essentially ending on, its end board is, just a pile of negates. So it's like a combo control deck, but that is Drytrons. Next deck I want to showcase to you guys is one that I just started recently playing and I've been in love with. This is Atemancipators. Now, these Atemancipators, I can't speak, they summon themselves. I'm not going to go over all of them essentially, but what they do is you can look at the top 5 cards. You can put a rock monster, a level 4 or lower non-tuner rock monster. But basically, you look at the top 5, you put a monster into play. And then you summon another one. You can only use them once per turn, obviously. So you look at the top 5, put the monster in play. Look at the top 5, and each one has certain special summoning conditions, so you don't even have to use your normal summon. You can just keep going. What we're trying to eventually get to is this card called Block Dragon. Completely insane card, banned in the TCG, probably for good reason. You can special summon it by banishing 3 earth monsters from your hand or graveyard. So when you go through some chains, you go through some link summons after you Atemancipators, put a bunch of stuff into play, go through a couple link summons, you have Block Dragon, then you banish 3 from your graveyard, special summon it. Now, it's not the most impressive stats for special summoning, but it has this ability that says if it's sent from the field to the graveyard, you can add 3 rock monsters whose total levels equal 8. So basically, when you use it for a link summon or other ways of destroying it when you special summon it, you get to draw 3 cards, which is completely insane because you just keep going up the chain. You eventually end on this is your boss monster, which when it comes into play, you exile banish a link monster. You get counters equal to the link material. You can use those for negates. You can equip with Union Carrier. You can search and equip this with this Dragon Buster Destruction Sword, which completely locks your opponent out of the extra deck. So it's really, really hard. This deck can set up some really unbreakable turn 1 boards that are really hard to beat. But it's basically just trying to keep going through the chain, special summoning. This is definitely a combo deck. I'm trying to think of what combo deck I would most akin this to. It's like a creature-based combo. Let me know in the comments if you're a Magic player. If what would summoning multiple creatures and using those to generate more creatures, it's kind of tough, but definitely a combo deck and a really good one at that. Atemancipators. All right, another deck here. We're going to do 2 more. We're going to do, this is what's called Phantom Knights. I have the deck name called Rongo XD. I'll show you why in a second. This is your boss monster. The way that you can summon it is you need 2 or more level 4 warriors. There's a long way to get to where you need to get to get level 4 warriors. But there's also ways that you can attach material onto this thing. So your goal with this deck is to summon this and get it to 5 materials. So if you summon this card and it has 5 materials, cannot be destroyed by battle, 3,000 attack defense, unaffected by other cards, your opponent can't normal or special summon monsters, and once per turn you can destroy all cards your opponents control. So this deck, there's a long, I'm sure you can, Google Phantom Knights combos. There's a long, convoluted way to get into it that I've been learning, but that's the boss monster here. But basically, similar thing, you're just trying to summon a lot of monsters and keep going up the link chain and utilizing. They all have different types of effects in their graveyard, so they can special summon from the graveyard. This one, if it's in play, you can discard a card to send a Phantom Knights card from your deck to the graveyard, so you get more material that way. But it's a very graveyard-based strategy. Has other ways to, just free special summon, teleport, special summon a level 3 or lower psychic. These dangers can special summon themselves for free. Tour guide, when it's normal summon, you can special summon another level 3 fiend, so you just get another tour guide and can go from there. But they all have different types of effects in the graveyard, where you can, this one, if it's in your hand, you can special summon it, which is pretty cool because it's a free summon. Again, you only get 1 summon per turn, remember that. So, yeah, this deck is essentially just trying to summon Rongo and hope your opponent can't play into it, which most people can't. Again, not going to go over the combos in detail, but that is Phantom Knights. All right, last but not least for this video, again, we're only going to go over some meta decks here. This is Virtual World. Now, a lot of when I first started playing this deck, it was a little complicated, but until I started learning it a little bit more. The Virtual World cards read, most of them, a lot of these tribal decks, you'll notice they all, all of these virtual world cards essentially have the same text, where you can, if it's in your hand, you can target a virtual world card you control, send a virtual world card of a different type from your deck to the graveyard, and you can special summon it. So ideally what you want to do is you want to put a virtual world spell into play, and you want to utilize these virtual worlds to target your spell, send a card to the graveyard, and then you can keep special summoning your virtual worlds for free. Now again, it's a similar thing, they keep going through the chain, but that's kind of how they start. You have other virtual world cards, you have Kowloon, and King Long. These all have like different types of abilities that you can banish from your graveyard to keep going up the chain. This deck's boss monster, similar to Rongo, we're trying to summon what's called True King of All Calamities, or I believe it's called VFD. I think it's the, I don't know if it's, I think there's a translation that calls it VFT. I don't know if it's Japanese or something like that. But this needs 2 level 9 monsters, and it has an effect that says once per turn you can detach a material from this card, declare an attribute. This turn, all face-up monsters in the field become that attribute. Also, all monsters in your opponent's possession with that attribute cannot activate their effects. And a lot of decks have, they're kind of like centered around one attribute, so really powerful effect. But yeah, this is the Virtual World deck, and that's kind of the last, this is definitely another combo deck. And that's kind of the last of the 5 meta decks that we're going over today. So that was kind of a little overview, just a bit of a small insight into the game of MasterDuel. Again, just wanted to start out with some informative videos, and before we get into some gameplay, let me know if there's anything you want me to talk about in maybe the next video. What I want to do in the next video is maybe go over some more meme type decks, maybe decks that aren't quite meta that I've been playing personally that have been fun. Maybe you can have some fun with them too, and then maybe we'll get into some gameplay. But again, please let me know in the comments. I would really appreciate it, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.